is
There we go.
wonderful, wonderful to see you.
I'm glad we can finally meet. My ministry, my passion is helping people on the way, especially seekers who are out there lost. And I know something of where you've been because I know seminary and all that, and even the spiritual direction from the Catholic world, etc. And I feel compelled to suggest to you that you might want to consider some dimension of spiritual knowledge that is not readily accessible to the Western world, namely this, which is the origins of our faith, Eastern Orthodox Christianity, not as another box to go into, but in terms of inner transformation. So that when you speak of surrender and all of that, there is a way, I just want you to know in case you don't know, to find a place within oneself that is free from the thoughts in the head and the emotions, that begins a true path of inner mastery, which ultimately leads to not I, but Christ lives in me. We could use words like higher consciousness, things that are not typically spoken of in the circles that are mainstream. And this, of course, is the fourth way that I teach, which originates in ancient Christianity, even though it's been categorized in the esoteric world. And so I just want you to be aware of this available, practical, applicable, ancient, authentic, inner way that we in the West have been cut off from our Christian legacy due to history and such. This issue of inner liberation from one's automatic self, which I'm sure you've got some experience of in the journey you've been through, can be, shall I say, sacramentalized into God consciousness, remembrance, etc. So all of that is available, is there, is to be had, but it's completely missing in Protestant circles, in mainstream Christian circles, even here, although if you were to walk into an Orthodox church, the Ethiopian frankincense alone might lift your state into something semi-ecstatic of peace and communion. I've dealt with many spiritual direction people who hit a wall. Their own tradition has its limits because ultimately you have to break out of the box completely. As I tell my students all the time, lovers of God, mystics cannot fit in a box, no matter how beautiful the box is. Okay. So the book itself is full of extreme honesty and vulnerable sharing, your journey into addictions and all of that due to initially family issues, etc. I'd like to try to focus on this idea of personal eschatology so that people beyond the Christian faith can understand what dynamics were involved in your healing, your liberation from the very intense chains that were wrapped around you for so long and could have completely destroyed you, but instead you have found your way out or been helped out. So, eschatology. Why don't you define how you understand eschatology, and then this particular term that is not mainstream, perhaps some might consider it, dare I say, heretical even, but that's why we're talking. What is the meaning of this in individual lives?
So, yes, eschatology, as I learned about it in seminary, is very simply put the study of the end of time and the end things, the end, however you want to say that. When I was growing up, that was, uh, you're going to burn in hell if you don't do this, 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 and this, if you don't believe this, 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 and this. I was raised in a Methodist church, but what I remember is sort of a fire and brimstone message that, if you're bad, you will burn in hell. And the end times being the time when in the book of Revelation, Jesus comes and, throws down the gauntlet and says, I want the good people over here and I want the bad people over here. And, and then we go our separate ways. The good people go with Jesus, the bad people go with Satan. And it's not pretty for people who are bad. And growing up in the world that I grew up in, that was terrifying because for the most part, my father had told me at a very early age that I was a mistake, that he and my mother only wanted 3 children and I was the 4th. And so in my little brain, that meant I was bad because I was a mistake. And so I spent my whole life really just being terrified of that end of times. And anytime I saw a movie about it or heard somebody's interpretation of Revelation, the book of Revelation, whether it was my father's or someone else, it scared me. It just scared me. And when I was sitting in, so I'm 15 years sober, I'm welcoming a higher power back into my life. It's in my mind, in my heart, it's Jesus, but I haven't really sort of said that out loud, or other than saying I'm a Christ follower. I refused to say I was a Christian because I felt like that had a bad connotation to it. And I'm sitting in my introduction to New Testament class, and it's towards the end of the semester, and my professor is very academic oriented and is talking about the book of Revelation in an academic way that I had never heard before, and saying that the possibility was there, that it was a symbolic writing of what Rome was doing to Israel and persecuting, and that the beast in the water was Rome. And, and I'm sitting there going, wait, what? What does he say? I mean, I was flabbergasted by this because I had never heard anything other than what I was raised with. And I'm getting chills telling you this now because it was like that. I was thinking, how is this possible? And I started to think it was like this flood of information that I had learned in that class all semester. Jesus speaking in symbol and metaphor and parable, and nothing really is what he's talking about. It's something different, and you must look deeper for the meaning and all those things. And I'm getting very excited talking to you about it even now, because I thought in that moment, what if he meant the end of me? What if he meant, I mean, we all talk so much about our relationship with Jesus being so personal. What if in all these symbolic things he was saying, he actually was saying, I'm going to come back for you. You personally, you singular, you. I'm coming back for you. And you need to come to me and be with me and give up your life for me. And in that moment, I had a repressed memory of a moment when Jesus came to me. It still to this day floors me that I had forgotten it for so long, or not even forgotten it, pushed it away, pushed it out of my memory for so long, because in the moment that he came to me, I ran from him. And this was a good, I don't know, 20 years before that moment, when I was still in my addictive nature, living in addiction. And he came to me when I was yelling at God for hating my life. And I turned and ran back into a party that I was at. And this moment, this is all happening in like a maybe 2 minute period of time in this introduction to New Testament class. And I was just having this flood of feeling, and it was just so amazing and wonderful and not scary at all. Like there was no fear in me in remembering that. There was no guilt. It was just, this is what that was. It came for me. And that was in 2015. It took me 2 years to then get up the courage to even mention that to that specific professor. And he was the one who said, I didn't even know what eschatology was really at that point. And he said, that sounds like eschatology. You should do a directed study on that. And I'm like, okay, let's do that, And that's kind of like where it went from. And I kind of went crazy on sharing that with you, but it was so intensely provocative is the word that comes to me in this moment. I was more alive in feeling all of that happening within me and through me in that moment than I think I ever had been in my whole life prior to that.
We could call it, to use another vocabulary, another state of consciousness, right?
Yes.
A higher state of vividness, a presence, expansion, a holistic thing. And the reason I want to go there is because the simple words, I came for you, he came for me, just shuts off meaning for people. It becomes a belief, a religiosity, something. For you, it was a transformative experience. And what has specifically intrigued me was in the idea of personal eschatology is going beyond the symbolism into the teaching that that whole apocalypse and everything that has been understood over the centuries is about the opportunity for one's existence to be transformed into the New Jerusalem, let's say, to go there
Yes.
with that symbolism. And therefore, it is intensely intimate, intensely existential, because here you were someone who had really been shattered by life, by circumstances, by addictions, and you began the process of rising out of that because you understood the immediacy of the connection. You were in your own apocalypse. I guess that's what really fascinates me. Each individual is lost in their fragmentation, their chaos, their error, their lostness. They are in an apocalyptic situation. And that so-called second coming is not some big epic event for humanity as much as it is a personal awakening to another dimension that frees you from the chaos.
Yes. Yes. And I would take it one step further because this was, I think I mentioned this was 15 years into my sobriety. So I had done significant, and I talk about it in the book, I'd done significant work on the childhood trauma. I had cleared away a lot of that debris. I had done work through personal inventories and making amends to other people and just clearing away all of that stuff. And you would think at that point, you would go, woo, I've arrived, but I had not yet truly looked Jesus in the face and said, yes, yes. I had not done that. And it took even more time for me to truly open Like as I was going through seminary and as I was writing the thesis, wanting the A was more important at that time for Jessica at that time. She still wasn't there. Even though she had had this amazing spiritual higher consciousness, whatever you want to call that moment, and followed it, she still had not completely surrendered. She still had not um, completely surrendered to following Jesus wherever he led. And that's, for me, the New Jerusalem. That's what it looks like. All this other stuff, all this stuff around us, this whatever you want to say, politics, religion, secular society, all of it. It's like, you know what? Yes, sometimes those things are important to know about, and I'd much rather just go sit and look at a tree, because that's where I feel closest to God. And I think that that may sound oversimplifying to someone. Um,
Not really, when you consider that it's the mindfulness of the Buddhist, it's the meditative qualities that we find in contemplative Christianity. It's a form of presence to the moment, of eternity and time being connected with. So it is experiential and transformative and authentic, and in nature all the more so because it doesn't have the madness of human behavior in its current form of insanity
yeah.
all around.
Yes.
So when you say words like following Jesus, in my world, it is important to translate because people will immediately associate to bad experiences in religion or assume a certain kind of religion and lose track of what you're really saying. So when you speak of sitting under that tree, for instance, what you're talking about is recollection, right? As they say, this quieting of the mind, this being here now, this openness, this receptivity, this mystical dimension, which then becomes universal rather than a particular dogma, tradition, even person, although clearly there is that person, that relational thing with the mystery.
Yes. Yes.
And so this personal eschatology is your own apocalyptic experience out of which you are lifted up. There will be no more tears, as is said in
Yeah.
that marvelous passage, Revelation 21, I think. And suddenly it all has a direct connection to your existence rather than some strange prophetic thing for human history.
Right. Right. This scary thing that people can, I think for a long time, it felt like it was something that religion was holding over my head. That's what it felt like. It's got to be personal. The things that I read there today come through me in a much different way than they did, say, 10 years ago.
Well, Jeremiah said it in that glorious passage, which, by the way, is my sermon this Sunday. I will write it on their hearts.
Yes.
And so that intimacy, that organic experience almost, shall we say, is what makes transformation possible as opposed to belief systems and dogmatic impositions.
Yes.
I'd be interested in how such a deeply personal experience, personal eschatology, ties into your desire to help those who are still in their apocalyptic addictions and such.
I think most importantly for me is continuing to be honest in my writing, in my work with others in spiritual direction, in my conversations, even my personal one-on-one conversations with others who are trying to recover, who are trying to come out of, say, addiction or family dysfunction. Um, Not that they're the only people I work with, but they're my, for the most part, the community I run in, so to speak. Um, because if I'm not honest and vulnerable and open with them, I don't feel I'm able to provide a safe place for them to be honest and open and vulnerable. And one of the first things that was done for me was somebody said to me, "You do not have to believe in the God you were raised with." And one of the things that my spiritual mentor, Paul, used to say was, when I embraced the apocalypse within, when I started to point at the truth of what was really happening inside of me, which was my ego was killing me. My ego, my pride, my vanity, all those things, my people pleasing, to take it to the other side of all of that. My good little girl attitude, my I'll get an A, my perfectionism, those things were killing me. They were killing me. And until I was able to point at them and honestly say, or even to say, look at me, I've become just like my father, who I spent most of my life hating. Until I was able to point to them and say, this is who I really am, and I need to let these things go so that I can follow Christ. I couldn't move on from it. I had to call it out.
So that part of that receiving the idea of personal eschatology is to name the apocalyptic reality of one's own existence.
Yes. Yes.
And when you speak again of Jesus, whom I like to call Yeshua, so that we can move on from the endless associations that are attached to that sound, even.
Yes.
When you speak of that, what you are really referring to, I'll quote Saint Seraphim of Sarov, the acquisition of Holy Spirit is the essence of the Christian purpose. That is to say, again, the Orthodox speak of Holy Spirit as the energies of God active in the world. So it is a spiritual dynamic, a phenomenon that is tangible, peace, joy, all of that, self-mastery,
Yes.
which takes it out of, well, who's this person you speak of, this supernatural person, into closer to us than our own breath, as St. Augustine says. So it is a mystic reality that we in the West, in our rational hubris, have failed to integrate into our sense of reality. So to bring all that back to the people you particularly want to reach, those who are wandering in that trauma that you have known, that prison really, right? To bring that idea of what of eschatology, personal eschatology really means to the individual. How do you communicate that to someone lost in alcoholism or food addiction or depression? How do you help them connect internally with something that will truly lift them up out of their misery?
Well, it starts with listening. It always starts with listening. Because very few people listen anymore, like truly listen. And I think what draws people in is being heard. And then identification for me, instead of comparing, identifying with, and not not insisting on this way for someone, sharing the intensity of it in my own experience instead. That's what I don't know how that happens other than to say, I ask God in each moment that before I sit with someone, before I talk with someone, before I mentor someone, or whether it's professionally or within my own recovery community, please use me, because the stuff that's coming from me is going to get in the way. I need you to use me as a channel, and allow the space for that person to have that personal relationship with Jesus.
Question: what do you want people who read this book to ultimately walk away with?
Hope seems like such a simple thing, but for me, I would have to say that if I had to put one word on that moment that I described when the idea came to me and I had the memory, hope was there for the first, like, true, absolute. I think the hope that is spoken of in the Bible.
Hope that there is help from above, that we are
There's
not
something
alone.
more than this terror. There's something more than this terror that we have all been, I shouldn't say all, that's an overgeneralization, but that has been sort of pummeled from pulpits, do this or that, the hope that this is Jesus coming just for you. That's how important you are to him.
One of the things to take out of that, in this world of eclectic spirituality, where many seekers have left Christianity far behind to find something, threw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say,
Yes.
is the uniqueness of the Christian revelation, which is that the individual matters. We are not merely a drop in the ocean or dealing with the void that we go back into. We do not merely dissolve. We are loved. There is an interaction. The I thou of Martin Buber, for instance, that extraordinary, incomprehensible fact that that which created all things, agape love, unconditional love as revealed by the Christ, cares about you whom he has known before you were born. That immensity, that uniqueness of Christianity, so forgotten, and yet in the depths of despair, such as you have described in that book, it is found in the darkest moments. And that is hope for sure. Thank you for sharing yourself, for sharing your journey, your faith. May
Thank
it be
you.
of help to others.